Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays homage to martyrs of Kargil war in Diwas, says Pakistan has not learnt any lessons, asserts India will crush terrorism with all its might. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar participates in ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting in Laos, says ASEAN is the cornerstone of India's Act East policy and its Indo-Pacific vision. Ahead of Paris Olympics, French rail network hit by series of arson attacks. US Vice President Kamala Harris steps closer to become Democratic presidential nominee, bags endorsement from both Michelle and Barack Obama. On the 25th anniversary of Kargil Victory Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid rich tributes to brave hearts who made supreme sacrifice during the war in 1999. He said Pakistan has not learnt anything from history. He reiterated India's resolve to crush terrorism in all its forms. More in this report.
The 26th of July 2024 marked the 25th anniversary of India's hard-fought and proud victory against Pakistan in the 1999 Cargill War. On Kargil Vijay Diwas, or a day to celebrate India's victory in Cargill, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Ladakh to pay homage to martyrs who protected the nation. The PM heard the Gaurav Gatha, or briefing on the Cargill War by NCOs, and visited Amar Sansmaran, the hut of remembrance. He also visited the Veer Bhumi and attended a Shraddhanjali Samaroh, or a ceremony to pay tribute to soldiers. Prime Minister Modi spoke on Pakistan's deceit at the time when India was making all efforts to maintain peace. He said that Pakistan has not learnt any lessons from history.
पाकिस्तान ने अतीत में जितने भी दुष्प्रयास किए उसे मुंह की खानी पड़ी है, लेकिन पाकिस्तान ने अपने इतिहास से कुछ नहीं सीखा है। वो आतंकवाद के सहारे, प्रॉक्सी वॉर के सहारे अपने आप को प्रासंगिक बनाए रखने का प्रयास कर रहा है।
Besides, Prime Minister also witnessed the first blast of the Shinkulla Tunnel project in Ladakh virtually. Shinkulla Tunnel project consists of a 4.1 kilometer long twin-tube tunnel to be constructed at around 15,800 feet on the Nimmu-Padum-Darcha road to provide all-weather connectivity to Leh. Once completed, it will be the world's highest tunnel. Prime Minister Modi also spoke on reforms in the defense sector. He expressed happiness over the fact that India is now making its mark as an arms exporter as well. The PM also dwelled at length on the Agnipath scheme as one of the most crucial reforms undertaken by his government.
अग्निपथ का लक्ष्य सेनाओं को युवा बनाना है। अग्निपथ का लक्ष्य सेनाओं को युद्ध के लिए निरंतर योग्य बनाए रखना है।
As a result of reforms in the defense sector, India's armed forces have now decided to stop importing more than 5,000 weapons and military equipment, while India's defense production has crossed 1.5 lakh crore rupees.
डिफेंस के प्रोडक्शन में पिछले 10 वर्षों में आत्मनिर्भर हुआ है भारत। करीब 70% के आसपास हमारा जो रिक्वायरमेंट है डिफेंस का, वो आज भारत में ही बनता है। भारत में डिफेंस का प्रोडक्शन 1 लाख करोड़ रुपए से अधिक हो गया है। आप सबने देखा डिफेंस के जो पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स हैं उनका वैल्यूएशन आज एक बहुत हाई वैल्यूएशन पहुंचा है और सबसे बड़े गौरव की बात है कि भारत में बने डिफेंस उपकरण आज 80 देशों में एक्सपोर्ट हो रहे हैं। करीब 25,000 करोड़ से ज़्यादा के एक्सपोर्ट्स डिफेंस के हो गए हैं।
Prime Minister Modi also gave examples of progress and mentioned holding G20 meetings in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. He said that the government's focus is on infrastructure development and tourism. Cinema halls are also opening up. He noted that this heaven and earth is swiftly moving in the direction of peace and prosperity. With Fuzail Ahmed, Gautam Roy, DD India.
And during the coverage of Kargil war, Doordarshan not only stood on the line of fire and covered the conflict, but also demolished Pakistan's propaganda by presenting the Indian side strongly with evidence to the world.
When we look back at the Kargil operation after 25 years, we can easily see that the conflict was first of all a reflection of the highest standards of the Indian Army, especially in a mountain warfare. The Kargil operation had once again proved that Indian soldiers can rise to any occasion against all odds. In June 1999, this operation also showed how Pakistan's psychological offensives had failed in the face of Indian Army's quick and daring counterattacks in what turned out to be an interdiction warfare instead of a regular all-out maneuver war. When Pakistan carried out a simultaneous media campaign about its so-called advantage from the mountain heights, Doordarshan News filed the first exclusive visual dispatches from the direct line of enemy fire and exposed Pakistani maneuvers to the world. Doordarshan News was the first to show features like the Tiger Hill, Peak of Tololing and Point 5410 along with trajectories of artillery fire from across enemy lines.
When the operation started, so the world press got to know about it, everybody got to know about it, and the Pakistani launched a psychological offensive, like it happened in 1962. And so the nation was under some kind of a pressure, the political establishment ought to be under pressure then, and that is the kind of advantage that the Pakistanis thought they would get away with. We started filming in the direct line of enemy fire. So what came out of that? What came out of that was that it was proved visually with television evidence that it was interdiction warfare. It was not maneuver warfare. Actually, to reach Tiger Hill, the peak of Tiger Hill, one would have to cross so many hills, hills, and then the peak. So we explained why, despite the advantage of aerial dominance, we would physically, the Indian Army would have to, the infantry, with artillery support, with air support, would have to physically go up and capture the peak and hoist the tricolor. And that's when the all-round military ability of the Indian soldier counts.
This also brought the first televised evidence that the Indian forces were actually inching forward in what had to be time-consuming interdiction operation to save human lives in Kargil sector. Bureau Report, DD India.
And talk about the significance of Kargil Victory Day. Joining me is retired Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation. Good evening and welcome, sir. Greetings to you on Kargil Vijay Diwas. First, Prime Minister says that Pakistan has not learnt any lessons from history, but India has. How do you articulate the manner in which the path taken by the two neighbours differ post-Kargil?
Thank you, Shubhendu. First, let me, before I get to that, may I just make a small statement? You know, especially to the youth following, watching a program, there's a very popular movie from in Hollywood, Mission Impossible, starring Tom Cruise. Now, that is real life. 25 years ago, the Indian Army actually executed Mission Impossible in real life. It is a saga in courage which I don't think has been matched anywhere in military history. Against impossible odds, this victory was achieved. So before I would like to, before I start, I would simply like to pay my respects and my salute to all those brave hearts who fought this war. Now, you see, you asked specifically how we have charted two different courses. I think the fundamental difference is that in Pakistan, they came under military rule. And in India, the military was subordinate to the political authority, because it is the political authority which is answerable to the people and not the military. Now, this fundamental difference has exacerbated over the years. And today, the major problem which Pakistan is facing is that the elected government still doesn't have the authority to do what they wish to do. And the military, which actually called the shot, is not accountable to the people. And once this element of accountability or non-accountability is there, nations chart different courses. In India, I think it is a very fine thing that the military is subordinate to the political authority, and the political authority is accountable to the people. And I think that really is the fundamental difference.
Right. General Katoch, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reiterated that India is determined to wipe out terrorism in all its forms. It is also a sort of restatement of the manner in which India's approach towards terrorism has transformed, a more proactive than passive approach to the menace.
But you see, Shubhendu, ever since independence, because we've been having this problem with Pakistan since independence, but the problem of terrorism really arose in the 80s. And then it became very, very serious in the 90s, and then it continued till 2014. And ultimately, the change came about in 2019 when a dramatically different approach was adopted by abrogation of Article 370. And we have seen the results since then, that in the last 5 years, from 2019 to 2024, the situation in Jammu and Kashmir has dramatically changed. Now, the question which people ask, and many people have been asking that is, but even after the abrogation, why do we still have terrorism? Now, the answer to that is that something which has been nurtured for about 3 decades by the Pakistan military, a large segment of the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been radicalized. And to overturn that, it cannot be done in a short period of 5 years, but a very proactive stance has taken place. And the situation in Jammu and Kashmir today is dramatically different to what occurred prior to 2014 and ever since, let me put the period, say 1990 to 2014. There has been a dramatic shift. And I feel that when we carry on this path, this terrorism is going to die. Now, 2 things stand out, Shubhendu. One is that over the last 2-3 months, we have seen an increase in terrorist attacks south of the Pir Panjal in the Jammu division, while Kashmir Valley has remained dormant. And this next question people ask is, what is India doing about it? I think the statement which has been given by the Prime Minister today is an indication of what the future will hold. Right. One, it is a very clear message to Pakistan, listen, you have to behave, otherwise there will be consequences. And I think that is a policy statement. It is not the Prime Minister just making out a statement just for the sake of making a statement. It has been very deliberately and very carefully crafted. It is a message not just to Pakistan and the terrorists. I think it is a message which goes across to the world that when anybody sponsors terror, India has the right to defend itself, and we will do it in any manner we see fit. Now that message has gone across. It is simply not a question of 20, 30 terrorists are coming to India. Okay, they'll be killed, not today, tomorrow. We'll kill all of them. Pakistan will send 20 more. We'll kill all of them. But ultimately, we have to get rid of the terrorism factory that lies in Islamabad. I think the Prime Minister has conveyed his message today very clearly. The pain will now be felt by the handlers, by the people who are promoting this terror, that is the Pakistan military and the Pakistan political authority, the political establishment. Now, right. This message has gone out to them. It has not gone, the terrorists, of course, they'll take the message. But the message has gone out to the Pakistani leadership, both in the military and in the political establishment. And we will see as to how they respond. If they don't respond, there will be consequences to them. And these consequences will be severe and long-term.
And General Katoch, finally, to be able to achieve that goal, how do you also look at the kind of preparedness that India's defense infrastructure has today?
You see, what has happened is, let me start again right from the independence time, I've served in practically all the border areas, and I commanded my division there. Now, that was the 2006-2007 period. Now, the communication infrastructure in Arunachal was very, very poor. In eastern Ladakh, it was also very poor. So this was the situation right from the time of independence till, I will say, about 2016-17. And then the changes started. Today, there's a dramatic improvement as far as the communication infrastructure is concerned. That is the most visible change. And that is why today the Chinese, you will find, are I can say in a panic mode. You see, their reaction has come because they have realized for the first time that India can do something to them. Otherwise, they were not too much concerned. India could reach there. The second thing was, the way the defense industry has shaped up. Now, over the last 5 years, the private sector has also come in into a very large way into defense manufacture, and the public sector has been transformed. When the Ordnance Factory Board was merged and defense public sector undertakings came into their place, the management has changed, the work ethos has changed, and we have seen a dramatic change. The third thing is that we are now exporting weapons. Earlier, there was a ban on exports, that we said we are a peaceful country, we have followed the Mahatma Gandhi, so we won't export. Yet we were importing weapons. So I think,
Right.
when over the next 5 to 10 years, our imports are going to decrease, our exports are going to increase, and our defense industrial base is going to get stronger and stronger. It is still in the infancy stage. To build up this base, it takes 20 years or 15 to 20 years. We have been in it for about 5 to 10 years now. It will take another 10 years. I think we'll be in a very good situation. And India will, even now, we are strong enough to resist external pressure in our foreign policy. After 10 years, there'll be no way in which anybody will be able to pressurize us, try as they will.
Okay. On that note, General Dhruv Katoch, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective. Moving on, still to come on DD India News Hour. Action-packed visit of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the United States. Mexican drug kingpin Ismael El Mayo Zambada and the son of his former partner arrested in Texas. And EU transfers 1.5 billion euros from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine.
This summer, the world turns its eyes to Paris, and DD India brings you every heartbeat, every victory, and every story. Introducing our special coverage of the Paris Olympics. Experience the passion, the drama, and the triumphs. With exclusive reports, expert analysis, and up-to-the-minute updates. Join us as we bring the spirit of the Olympics to your screens.
Get ready for the ultimate sporting extravaganza on DD India.
DD India presents Champions Day Paris. Only on DD India. Every day at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Former US President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle endorse Kamala Harris's presidential bid, saying they're going to do everything to make sure that Harris wins the polls.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi. You're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both.
And DD India correspondent Mitch McCann has sent this report from Washington, D.C.
In a phone call that was posted on Kamala Harris's social media channels, Barack Obama tells Harris, "We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office." Then, in a later statement, the couple said they would do everything we can to elect Kamala Harris the next president of the United States. Since Harris's elevation to becoming the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee, Barack and Michelle Obama had held back from any endorsement of Harris, as many prominent Democrats offered their support. Barack Obama has cast himself as an impartial elder statesman of the party, not wanting to become too involved in the process of choosing a candidate himself. Meanwhile, it's been reported this morning by US media that Kamala Harris is hoping to have chosen a running mate to be her vice presidential candidate by the 7th of August. And finally, it's unclear if or when Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will be seen together on a debate stage. Trump's campaign has said it would be inappropriate to debate Harris, as she is only the presumptive nominee, and Democrats may change their mind. Harris has suggested Donald Trump and his team are backpedaling and that she's ready. Mitch McCann in New York, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, US Vice President Kamala Harris has begun her campaign trail after replacing President Joe Biden as the Democratic presidential candidate. The first video advertisement was released on Thursday, framing the campaign as a battle to protect it's called individual liberties. The US Vice President rallied the American Federation of Teachers on Thursday during its 88th National Convention in Houston. While addressing the officials, Kamala focused on economic policy, workers' rights, touting plans for affordable health care and childcare.
Donald Trump and his extreme allies want to take our nation back to failed trickle-down economic policies, back to union busting, back to tax breaks for billionaires. Donald Trump and his allies want to cut Medicare and Social Security, to stop student loan forgiveness for teachers and other public servants. And I say to AFT, they even want to eliminate the Department of Education.
Moving on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in poll-bound US as he speaks to shore up support for his country from American leaders across party lines. More in our next report.
An action-packed visit of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the United States. And this is his first trip abroad since the Israel-Hamas conflict began last year. On Friday, he is meeting the former US President Donald Trump at his Florida resort. He earlier met US President Joe Biden at the White House. This was his first meeting in Washington during the Biden presidency. They discussed the ceasefire deal with Hamas, which, although proposed weeks ago, has not been agreed upon, and the release of dozens of hostages still being held by Hamas.
Mr. President, we've known each other for 40 years, and you've known every Israeli Prime Minister for 50 years, from Golda Meir. So from a proud Jewish Zionist to a proud Irish-American Zionist, I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the State of Israel.
When he met US Vice President Kamala Harris on Thursday, she pressured to help reach a Gaza ceasefire deal that would ease the suffering of the Palestinian civilians, striking a tougher tone than President Joe Biden. She made it clear that she was losing patience with Israel's military approach.
So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself, including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah.
In an Oval Office address on Wednesday, Biden cited a desire for unity in the Democratic Party as it seeks to defeat Trump. As a key reason, he decided not to seek re-election, but to instead support Harris for the 2024 race. Harris maintains closer ties to Democratic progressives, some of whom have urged Biden to attach conditions to U.S. weapons shipments to Israel out of concern for high Palestinian civilian casualties in Gaza. The U.S. is a major arms supplier to Israel and has protected the country from critical United Nations votes. Business was also on the agenda as the Israeli Prime Minister and billionaire Elon Musk discussed technological cooperation. Musk attended Netanyahu's congressional address as his guest. Bureau Report, DD India.
Mexican drug kingpin Ismael El Mayo Zambada and the son of former partner Joaquin El Chapo Guzman were arrested on Thursday in El Paso, Texas. Zambada were detained after landing in a private plane in El Paso area. El Chapo was extradited to United States in 2017 and is serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison. Both Zambada and Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of El Chapo, face multiple charges in the United States for allegedly funneling huge quantities of drugs to U.S. streets, including fentanyl, which are searched to become the leading cause of death for Americans between the age of 18 to 45. Romania has said it found Russian drone fragments near Danube and Ukraine border after overnight Russian attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure on Thursday. However, NATO said it saw no sign of an intentional attack on the alliance's territory after Moscow troops fired 38 long-range drones into Ukraine. Russia, in its counteroffensive against Ukraine, recently has been targeting Ukraine's fuel, arm depot and power grids. The attacks came as Dmitry Peskov, press secretary for Russian president, on Thursday said Russia was open to negotiations with Ukraine, but the country needs to know how ready Ukraine is for negotiations first. Meanwhile, the European Union is set to transfer 1.5 billion euros from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Reacting on the latest development on Friday, Kremlin has said it will carefully consider how to respond to European Union's move. Western countries blocked around $300 billion worth of sovereign Russian assets after Moscow sent troops into Ukraine in February of 2022. Earlier, EU President Ursula von der Leyen said it was transferring the funds to Kiev for the defense and reconstruction of Ukraine. China's government is calling on municipalities to prepare for tropical storm Gaemi, which is heading inland. The storm has affected more than 630,000 people in China's Fujian so far. The storm has already killed dozens of people in Taiwan and the Philippines and is now set to bring heavy rains to already badly flooded regions of China. DD India's correspondent Chris Gilbert gets us more.
The storm affected 630,000 households as it made landfall on the Fujian coast of China on Friday. About half of that number were requested to relocate or evacuate or find shelter from the storm surges, from the deluges, and from the severe winds of up to 100 kilometers an hour, and from the heavy rainfall of an accumulated 250 millimeters for that part of China. And while it was severe, it was significantly weakened from Thursday when it hit Taiwan with almost twice as strong winds of more than 205 kilometers an hour sustained gusts. The storm is now heading into the central area of China. It is bringing this rainfall with it, and this is a part of the country which has already been strongly affected, significantly affected by weeks of summer rains, as Gaemi has already claimed lives throughout the Philippines and throughout Taiwan, and China's central government certainly wants to prevent any more fatalities if it can possibly do so. The storm is heading for Shanxi province, which is home to the largest freshwater lake in China, and so with the risk of those banks bursting, with the risk of flooding and heavy rain in the future, even though the storm has weakened since it hit Taiwan, the danger has certainly not passed for China. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. In a major operation, Spanish police seized 4 metric tons of cocaine hidden in rice sacks in Barcelona. The officials also busted the leading drug organization operating in Spain, UK and Paraguay. 8 people were arrested in Spain, while 2 in Paraguay. A series of explosions took off in a firework factory in a town near Bulgaria's capital city, killing 1 person. Many others were severely injured in the blast. 2 people inside the warehouse are still missing. The area has been cordoned off by the officials. Philippine Coast Guard officials held a meeting with shipping company officials after a marine tanker capsized off the coastal town of Lime. The officials also said they are ready for an underwater assessment of the impacts of the oil spill. The late leader of Vietnam's ruling Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, was finally laid to rest on Friday, Hanoi's Madich Cemetery. Trong had passed away last week and his duties are temporarily being handled by President Lam. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Dr. Jaishankar is at the ASEAN India Foreign Ministers meeting. We will talk about the significance of the visit. World Heritage Committee announces inclusion of Moidams, the mound burial system of Han Dynasty Assam, as World Heritage Site from India.
Why is strategic autonomy such a fundamental pillar of Indian foreign policy? How is it manifesting in India's current diplomacy around the world? And what is the future of strategic autonomy as India rises to the status of a leading power in the world?
We are saying that it's not only about strategic autonomy of India, it's also about strategic autonomy of other nations, including Taiwan and Tibet. And that's where we are putting China into the spot.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays homage to martyrs of Kargil war in Diwas, says Pakistan has not learnt any lessons, asserts India will crush terrorism with all its might. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar participates in ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meet in Laos, says ASEAN is the cornerstone of India's Act East policy and its Indo-Pacific vision. Ahead of Paris Olympics, French rail network hit by series of arson attacks. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Laos for ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting. Digital, defence, maritime connectivity, security, health and traditional medicine and cultural heritage preservation are priority areas for India-ASEAN cooperation.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar participated in the ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting in Vientiane, the capital of Laos, on Friday. Speaking at the opening session, the EAM Dr. Jaishankar underscored the significance of ASEAN as the cornerstone of India's Act East policy and vision for Indo-Pacific.
For India, ASEAN is the cornerstone of its Act East policy and the Indo-Pacific vision that was thereafter built on it. For us, political, economic and security cooperation with ASEAN is of the utmost priority.
Dr. Jaishankar also spoke about the situation in Myanmar, keeping the sea lines of communication open and free, Quad's outlook on ASEAN and the conflict in Gaza.
It is encouraging to note that our partnership acquires ever more dimensions with each passing year. While our achievements are substantial, our ambitions must always remain high.
The minister held a series of bilateral meetings with his counterparts from ASEAN countries as well. Dr. Jaishankar met Lao PDR ministers, including its Home Minister Vijay Buddhakham. Dr. Jaishankar met Brunei Foreign Minister Dato Haji Iriwan. Both of them launched the logo celebrating 40 years of the India-Brunei diplomatic ties. Dr. Jaishankar also met Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of New Zealand, Winston Peters. Both of them discussed education, agriculture technology, Pacific Islands and cricket. Dr. Jaishankar met Vivian Balakrishnan, Deputy Foreign Minister of Singapore. He thanked Singapore for steering ASEAN-India relations in the last 3 years as country coordinator. Dr. Jaishankar met Cho Tae-yul, Foreign Minister of South Korea. Dr. Jaishankar also met Retno Marsudi, Foreign Minister of Indonesia. Dr. Jaishankar also held bilateral talks with Muhammad Haji Hassan, Foreign Minister of Malaysia. Dr. Jaishankar also met European Commission's Vice President Josep Borrell Fontelles. Earlier on Thursday, Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi and held talks on finding an early resolution of the remaining issues along the line of actual control to stabilize and rebuild bilateral relations.
We have both made considerable efforts to resolve the related issues. Our endeavor is to complete that process and ensure that there is full respect for the line of actual control and of agreements that we have signed in the past. Insofar as our bilateral ties are concerned, we also agree that they are best handled with the approach of three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual interest and mutual sensitivity. We will also appreciate that the state of the border will necessarily be reflected in the state of our ties.
Meanwhile, India and China will hold an early meeting of the Working Mechanism on Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs to take the discussions forward. Bureau Report, DD India.
And talk about Minister Jaishankar's visit to Laos. Joining me is Professor Swaran Singh, Foreign Affairs expert. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, let's first talk about India-China relations. Second time this month, foreign ministers of India and China have met, calling for LAC issues to be resolved. How do you read their stance and also the apparent roadblocks in the process?
Thank you, Shubhandu. First of all, this is not a standalone meeting of two foreign ministers. They were meeting first at the ASEAN summit, and now, as you mentioned, in Vientiane, this is India-ASEAN foreign ministers meeting. What is interesting is that both Wang Yi and Dr. Jaishankar have known each other for more than decades. So they have a very good personal bonhomie, and they want to utilize these opportunities to take forward the disengagement process on line of actual control. And the wording from both sides is very interesting. For example, India has underlined that they should move forward with purpose and urgency and complete the process of disengagement. And the Chinese side has slightly differently mentioned that both sides should come halfway round and then they should work together in exploring, as they call, new progress possible in the bilateral relations, because global South is expected. So I think what is very clearly interesting is that both sides are able to openly share, even if their versions at this stage are slightly at variance with each other. And of course, both underline that the 16th meeting after 2020 of the working mechanism of consultation and coordination on border affairs should happen as soon as possible. So there is a certain hope and momentum, but I assume something that might surprise us weeks later is the fact that the two foreign ministers may be talking of how to revive the informal summit meetings of two leaders, which is where I think the ice break can happen in that meeting. And I suppose that will be the subject which is not yet in public, but hopefully they are talking on that also.
And so do you also feel that this sort of understanding and the communication links between the leadership levels, the foreign ministers level for now, also helps facilitate the military talks which are meeting the roadblocks all through these 4 years?
That now in their last two meetings, the semantics are very interesting. They have started talking about strong direction.
Yes.
Now this is the same language that was developed by Modi and President Xi meeting in Wuhan in 2018, where they had agreed to give strategic guidance to their armed forces to ensure peace and tranquility. So a similar language, again, I think to me is an indication that they want to really ensure that sooner the two leaders meet is better, because that is where this desire, which is expressed from both sides, of completing the disengagement on a line of actual control. I suppose there are so many rounds of talks that have already happened, 21 rounds of core commander meetings, then of course 15 other meetings of working mechanism, as I mentioned, after 2020. So I suppose there is enough groundwork done, but finally, if some things have to be clinched, there is a certain hint here that maybe sooner or later, in fact sooner than later, possibility of India-China reviving that informal summit meeting. And the language of strong guidance, I think, kind of alludes in that direction for me.
And Professor Singh, as Minister Jaishankar engages with ASEAN leadership, he also calls ASEAN as a cornerstone of India's Act East policy. What defines this partnership between the two sides?
I think that partnership again is an ongoing, long, well-established partnership from '92 onwards. India has been part and parcel of all ASEAN-centric initiatives and organizations, including being the founding member of East Asia Summit. Now, this coincides with India's increasing interest from 1990s in engaging East, whether it is BIMSTEC, whether it is engaging ASEAN at various levels. Then we talk of our Far East and Far East initiative, from Look East to Act East. So India's engagement with East has expanded, but India is one of those countries that continues to say that in this entire region, which is also now called Indo-Pacific region, ASEAN must be on the driving seat and ASEAN should be the center stage to provide that opportunity for all other stakeholders to come and intervene and negotiate on issues. India also talks about making the whole region much inclusive, which is on similar lines with ASEAN. So definitely ASEAN has a proven relationship, whether it is trade relationship, investments, and when we move to Act East, we also move to strategic and security cooperation with many of these countries. So India is very deeply, widely engaged with ASEAN, and I think this again reinforces the series of meetings that we mentioned Indian Foreign Minister had at bilateral level with all these foreign ministers. Again showcases, our foreign minister being a career diplomat, he's known most of these people on, personal level for long years, and therefore that adds on to the advantage in diplomacy. I think that is clearly visible in the way he's present there and he's engaging with all of the foreign ministers in Vientiane.
Right, sir. And sir, could you tell us a little more on the manner in which ASEAN approaches the issues of the regional geopolitics, especially the Indo-Pacific, as you mentioned?
I think it's interesting to see that in 2018, India and ASEAN had signed on something called Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, and they have since been working together after that joint statement signed in 2018. And on many issues, they see the geopolitics evolving in the region exactly in the same fashion. For example, they want to make sure the region stays inclusive, all stakeholders should be added there, this should not be militarized, dialogue should be the kind of priority in solving all problems. So ASEAN and India in some ways are largely focused on normative and inclusive way of dealing with challenges, whether they are non-traditional security challenges or challenge of China emerging as a powerful player in the region. And ASEAN therefore finds engagement and conversation with India perfectly at home with each other in that sense. From other countries, for example, particularly during Trump administration, Pompeo had taken a rather stronger line. And some other countries have also slightly views at variance. For example, AUKUS, that constitutes of Australia, Britain and America. India and ASEAN always find themselves much closer to how they wish to resolve issues, how they wish to address issues. And I think that shows why ASEAN has always welcomed India. Right from late 1980s, ASEAN had wanted India to a major player in that sense in the region. India initially had its own reasons to stay sort of at a distance. But from 1990s, India has been very seriously engaged in the whole region, primarily using ASEAN as the platform, as the center stage, which again gets reiterated again and again in all these expressions that come about repeatedly from leadership on both sides.
Professor Swaran Singh, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour, sharing your inputs. India's Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra addressed the Confederation of Indian Industry post-budget conference today. The conference was held in New Delhi. Addressing the meeting, he stressed that the primary focus of the union budget has been on taxpayers and to ease paying of taxes.
The primary and the only focus, in fact, the only focus really, has been on the taxpayers. So whether, it is the taxpayers from the industry, whether it is the taxpayers from the trade, whether it is the personal income tax payers, insofar as our revenue proposals especially are concerned. And you would have noted that most of the part B of the budget really covered areas which would have proposals which would have benefited the industry, the trade and the common man.
World Heritage Committee has announced inclusion of Moidams, the mound burial system of the Ahom dynasty, ASEAN, India, as the 43rd heritage site from the country. Moidams is the first cultural heritage site and the third overall site from the northeast to be inscribed on the World Heritage List. The two others are Kaziranga and Manas, which are inscribed under Natural Heritage category. Minister of Culture and Tourism held a press briefing on it.
आज ये जो साइट हमारी इंस्क्राइब हुई है, ये पूर्वोत्तर भारत के लिए निश्चित रूप से एक बड़ी सफलता और आसाम के लिए भी एक बहुत बड़ा दिन है। इस साइट के विश्व धरोहर सूची में सम्मिलित होने से न केवल असम में यदि मैं कहूँ पूरे भारत भर में आने वाले समय में आने वाले पर्यटकों की संख्या में, उन स्थानों को देखने जाने वाले पर्यटकों की संख्या में निश्चित ही जो है एक बहुत बड़ा उछाल आने की अपेक्षा हम सब लोग करते हैं.
On the sidelines of the 46th session of the World Heritage Committee being held in New Delhi, India and the United States signed a significant bilateral agreement to prevent illegal trafficking of cultural properties. The agreement will help both the countries to combat trafficking of cultural artifacts and also help repatriation of important artifacts of India from the United States. The agreement was signed by Secretary Union Ministry of Culture Govind Mohan and US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti. Let's now take a look at other stories making news today. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar participated in the 77th Foundation Day celebrations of Hansraj College, University of Delhi. Addressing the gathering, Vice President Dhankar stated the education provided to youth should combine modern scientific knowledge with traditional Indian values. President House of India will auction selected gift items presented to President and former Presidents on various occasions through an online portal called e-Uphaar. The portal was launched by President of India on the completion of 2 years of her presidency. In the first phase, around 250 exquisite gifts will be auctioned. All 14 crew members of tugboat that had drifted in Arabian Sea off the Alibag coast in Maharashtra's Raigad district have been rescued. The rescue operation of the crew from the small carrier operated by JSW Group was launched with the help of Coast Guard. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Ahead of Paris Olympics, miscreants attack France's high-speed train network. And Paris Olympics 2024 is going to be the greenest ever games.
Why is strategic autonomy such a fundamental pillar of Indian foreign policy? How is it manifesting in India's current diplomacy around the world? And what is the future of strategic autonomy as India rises to the status of a leading power in the world?
We are saying that it's not only about strategic autonomy of India, it's also about strategic autonomy of other nations, including Taiwan and Tibet. And that's where we are putting China into the spot.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Time for all the action from the world of sports. Just ahead of Paris Olympics ceremony to kickstart on Friday, some miscreants attacked France's busiest TGV high-speed train network. This has caused enormous problems for commuters as they have to wait for hours with their luggage and stations have got jam-packed. The massive attack in coordinated manner at different places had paralyzed France. The state-owned railway officials said arsonists had damaged signal boxes along the lines connecting Paris with cities such as Lille in the north, Bordeaux in the west, Strasbourg in the east. However, security forces came into action and an attack on Paris-Marseille line was foiled. Many trains have either been delayed or diverted. And the Paris Olympics 2024 is going to be the greenest ever games. To know how, take a look at this special report.
The Paris 2024 Olympics Organizing Committee has pledged to host an environmentally friendly games for the world. The organizers have promoted Paris 2024 as the greenest Olympics ever, aiming to halve the carbon emissions of previous Olympics.
What we can see here, and I'm here for more than a week. And wherever you come and go, you see that the lights are on green. The preparations are going very well. The stage is set.
The Paris Olympics organizers have drastically cut back on building new stadiums and venues and have relied heavily on wood as a building material for new infrastructure and used low-carbon concrete.
Several of these events are now taking place in temporary stadiums and venues that have been built across the city. Incidentally, some of the games will obviously go outside the city of Paris to other areas It's also the most sustainable Olympics ever, because they haven't built this mega infrastructure all around, which usually are not utilized afterwards. They've built an Olympics village in the most depressed part of the Paris region, the poorest part of the Paris region, in a way to revitalize it. And they've built an aquatic center. Everything else is either in temporary venues or on renovated old structures. And of course, the farthest venue is several time zones away in the Pacific, in the Tahiti.
Let's understand how Paris is going greener to make it the most eco-friendly games. 95% of all Olympic infrastructure is being fully reused. Temporary stadiums have been built near famous landmarks to make use of spectacular setting. Only one permanent venue has been built, the Aquatic Centre. The Aquatic Centre is built largely from carbon-storing timber, covered in solar panels, an advanced water recycling system. The Athletes' Village will be repurposed afterwards as social housing. Over 60% of meal options will be vegetarian, helping to lower the carbon footprint. The Olympic venues will be powered exclusively by renewable energy. 90% of the products used for Paris 2024 come from recycled materials or will be reused later.
The 2024 Paris Olympics, with its groundbreaking sustainability initiative, will likely leave a lasting impact on the global environment. By setting new standards for eco-friendly practices, the Games are expected to inspire future host cities and international events to prioritize sustainability. Ultimately, the Paris Games could act as a powerful catalyst for environmental action, fostering a global shift towards more sustainable and resilient future. With camera person Senthil, Narayan Singh, DD India, Paris.
And the Paris Summer Games will officially get underway from Saturday, with matches scheduled in different disciplines. India is fielding 117 athletes across 16 sports disciplines. And DD India correspondent Narayan Singh joins us live from Paris for more. Narayan, take us through the preparations of the mega sporting extravaganza. What will be special in Paris Olympics?
Paris is ready to host the 33rd edition of the Summer Games, and we know that it's a mega event, and athletes from all over the world, more than 200 national sports committees will come here to participate in this coveted game. If we talk about security is at the high alert, and the most important thing is that the Paris Olympic Committee, the Games Committee, and the IOC has tried to make it a greenest ever game, as it was mentioned in the report. New technologies have been used here. If we talk about the Athletes' Village, actually they have tried to reduce the carbon footprint. For food at the Athletes' Village is 60% vegetarian, and so it is also a message to the world that we have to save our planet by reducing the carbon footprint. And also they have used a different technology to cool the Athletes' Village. Actually, they are cooling it through the underground water, and it is very, we can say that it's very low cost, and also it will help the environment to survive. If you cool the environment through groundwater, actually the groundwater temperature in France is around 7 to 8 degrees, and it is very easy to bring it to the optimal level with less consumption of energy and the less cost. If you take the help of the air, then if you take the outer temperature is around 28, 29 sometime, and to bring it to the optimal level, it takes a lot of, we can say that, cost, and also it's a consumption of energy.
Right,
so
interesting
in that
initiatives.
sense, it's a good thing that we are saving the planet and giving a message to the world, and the upcoming host cities also to go green.
Right, and if you talk about the games, Narayan, how's the Indian contingent gearing up to better the Tokyo Medal Haul?
Shubhendu, as we know that it is one of the strongest contingent, 117 members are there in the Indian contingent, and last time 121 were there, despite of the fact that this time women's hockey team is not there. Otherwise, the tally would have been increased to more than 130. So all in all, we are fully confident that our athletes will break the previous record, and when the event will start after the, we can say that it's going to first, we will, all eyes will be on the shooting arena, where a medal round will take place, and we are hoping that our shooters on day one will do a miracle and win a medal for India. And if India wants to break that barrier of the 7 medals, of the previous edition. Definitely our shooters need to do well, considering the fact that it is the largest ever Indian shooting contingent at the Paris game. It is a 21-member contingent, and we are hoping that if shooting gets 2 or 3 medals, definitely that tally is going to be, we can say that, easily crossed. And if we talk about athletes in track and field, 29 track and field athletes are there. It is also one of the largest. So we are hoping that Neeraj Chopra will defend his Tokyo gold medal, and Neeraj has won every medal on the plate. And if he defends the Tokyo Olympic gold, definitely that is going to be a icing on the cake. And apart from Neeraj, we have also the javelin thrower like Kishore Jaina. In Asian Games, the duo performed fantastically well, and Kishore Jaina is also giving a stiff competition to Neeraj Chopra also. The way they finished 1-2 in the podium in the Asian Games, we are hoping that they can replicate that performance here also. And in track and field also, many athletes are there in boxing. Nikhat Zareen, despite of the fact that she has got a tough draw in the boxing, so it is, we are hoping that she will just overcome that obstacle and win a medal for India here at the coveted games in the Paris.
Expectations are sky high from all the athletes. Narayan, thank you very much for joining us with all the latest from Paris. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.